This is the weekly product marketing meeting for April 12th. So not a ton on the agenda today. So the one bullet point I have here is, have you all seen the timeline for sales plays? So I put a link
I have not.
to this issue, and so the intention behind this one issue, I believe, was to coordinate across GTM motions to have a unified timeline. But if I'm correct, so ideally this is what I would like to see, that I don't think we've totally seen altogether. I think we're getting there as far as go-to-market motions in general and sales plays in particular. But ideally, for example, if somebody signs you up for a deadline, ideally or a due date, ideally they ask you and they say, hey, can you deliver thing X by this date? And then you would say, yes, I can. I commit to doing that date. I don't think that happened in this case, which is why I wanted to raise it to the entire group, where I think that's maybe depending on which go-to-market team you're on, I think that maybe some folks were aware, yes, that was a date and we discussed it as a team and we committed to it. But I wanted to kind of raise it to the whole group to say, hey, if you have not, look at the date, look at the stuff that's due for your go-to-market team. If you have not committed to that date, leave a comment on the issue. Honestly, kind of even just evaluating it too, I'm kind of thinking to myself, I don't necessarily know who would be the DRI for these dates. And I think it should be us, and I think it's probably you, Cindy. Does that sound right to you? That
I think the date should be by each team lead for each of the GTM motions. I think PMM needs to look at it and make sure it makes sense, and if it doesn't, have a conversation in those team meetings. But I think the DRI for the schedule and the work plan is whoever's leading each of the GTM motions.
So do we need this issue then?
Yeah, I think it helps keep us. It gives us something for visibility. I didn't realize the dates of GitOps and the platform, so that's good to know.
Yeah, and even if we end up landing a play in a different week, it's good to know what the ballpark is, like what the sort of expectations are that have been set. We haven't actually on our team fully committed to a Gantt chart that's going to land in that first week in June with the sales play. But could we? Sure. I mean, it's a couple months from now. We could do that. It's just good to know what the expectations are, and maybe when we Gantt it out, we're actually a week early or late or something like that.
I'm kind of surprised why the platform is so late. It seems like we ought to be able to pull that in closer.
Yeah, well, we've been having some discussions on that, and we're going to have some more this week. But I dropped a comment into the platform channel on Friday about that. There was some discussion about whether a DevOps platform, how much a DevOps platform sales play was needed right now, or certainly the campaign. So my suggestion was just like, well, let's finish the sales play. Let's give sales something that they need when they want to sell the value of a single app, because we know they're going to want to do that. But everything else might wind up tabled. So
why? I don't understand. It seems like I thought that was, I mean, that's the key to our message. That was a big brand launch. Why would we not follow that with a campaign?
Well, the question is like, is there a product campaign based on? There was some conflating of the brand message and the GTM motion, and that was confusing to a lot of people, including some of us, I think, myself certainly being one of them. And Brian actually did some work on separating those as well. So my belief, and I could be wrong, and this is being recorded, so don't quote me on this, although I guess it's quotable now, is that there were some folks who were thinking that there would be a campaign around the brand message that was going to come out of our team, which doesn't really make sense because it's a brand campaign. And I wasn't in all of the meetings, but there were some talks that our team lead, Zach, had with others, and it looks like there wasn't a whole lot of appetite from sales for where we were headed on the campaign side. So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Brian's.
I was going to say on that topic, Brian, do you mind linking your MR in the agenda? And actually, do you mind just sharing screen for a moment and kind of showing it to the team, and then we can encourage this kind of team to review it and then share it with some broader folks as well?
Let's see here. Now we've got a series of other changes to the use case page, aka the go-to-market strategy page, that are not in what you're looking at right now in this branch, just because we started working them separately. But yeah, you can see we actually felt the need to go to the trouble of having a section that specs out the differences between the brand messaging and the use case. And I think that's useful to do, if not for anything else, then for future reference or for folks who are not inside of our conversations every day. We've got individuals like Val who are inside of both conversations, the brand messaging and the go-to-market team, but a number of folks who are only on one side or the other. So it's useful for us internally, but I think going forward it'd be even more useful to separate those out. I will link to it in the agenda, but that's just to show that we've started working on it. We're going to pass this around some more. William and Cormac and I have particularly contributed, but we also are feeding into this conversations with, Becky and Zach and a lot of other folks from one or the other side of this. So a lot of other threads have been sort of woven together there. And as far as not needing a sales play, I think what we really needed was to flesh out a little bit more of the use case, and we're still doing that. So we're going to sew that patient up this week, and then the more sort of needed, this is definitely an open patient still, but the more needed play, it felt like, was one of the competitive plays. And so that's our next decision as a team, is which of those competitive plays to focus on, to Cindy's question. There just wasn't a real practical demand for a DevOps platform sales play, so long as the use case itself was fleshed out. Obviously, that's our key differentiator, and it's underwriting almost every conversation we have, but that doesn't mean it needs a play per se.
And the so far, what's been discussed for the competitive play next would be either some sort of GitHub takeout or potentially something Agile related, because this is being recorded, because there are some things coming up in the coming weeks that will probably help with that and also increase interest in that. But there's also possibility, I saw something mentioned in one of the meetings last week, said that may feed into the premium to ultimate story, in which case that if that's being handled elsewhere, then that could free us up to work on one of the more direct takeouts.
Yeah.
Cool. And so there's an MR there that just has a little section. What's the difference between the DevOps platform as a use case for using GitLab and Open DevOps platform, which is our brand message? And probably right now it has a certain opinion, but obviously, looping in the brand folks and Todd and the org to kind of come up with a sharp way to articulate this to alleviate some of that confusion. So Samia, looks like you had a question about launching a sales play.
Yeah, and perhaps Cindy can help me with this. So the MR that William linked in the second point calls for launching a sales play on a specific date. I'd like to understand what entitles launching a sales play. Is it just having all your sales playbook assets together, do a sales enablement during that week, um, and make sure that sales is equipped to go and sell? Or is there something else? I mean, do we have like a set of things that we definitely need to have when we say that we're launching the sales play? I've linked to your definition of a sales play over here as well. So is that the bomb that we need to go with when we say we're going to be launching a sales play in a specific week?
Well, I mean, it's a very good point, because each sales play is going to be a little bit different in terms of, like, for instance, you're going to be doing some enablement for the SDRs, whereas the CI one is not, because it's an expand and the SDRs aren't really involved. So it's more of an FYI for them. So very good question. Maybe I need to add a checklist of like launch readiness or something.
Yeah, I think that would be useful, just so that everybody in the org also knows what we actually mean by launching the sales play, and also looking at David Sommer's note in the GTM motions channel, where he said that we don't have, I think it was last week sometime, that we don't have a clarity on where we're going with the sales play launch, right? We haven't reached a reconciliation on what we want to call as a sales play or a sales playbook. So this was probably before your discussions with David. Subsequently, you've had some discussions with him, because I saw some threads around that. But I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page when we say that this is what we're going to be doing when we are going to launch a sales play.
Yeah, and it may be tough. So we used to do this. We used to launch go-to-markets. We use a smart sheet, and we called it, we had a minor and a major launch, and they all had different items, and you could pick and choose what would make up the launch. So I don't ever think it's going to be a one-to-one relationship. But we also don't have a main checklist like that. So maybe that's a good thing. And I did not like using smart sheets, by the way.
No,
Yeah,
I would say let's have an MR template.
Yeah.
With the checklist, and so you've got an actual MR for the actual launch, and it would have a checklist of things.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. And another follow-on question on that, related to SDR enablement and SDR related material, like the outreach sequence and so on. The feedback that I got from Elsha was that normally what they do is they take what we provide them as a part of assets and sales playbooks and so on, and they would create their own outreach sequences.
Yep.
In your sales play definition, we do have an SDR outreach sequence as a bullet point. So maybe Elsha came from a regional point of view, where in every region they probably modify it based on what the requirement is for the region. But who would be a global counterpart, so to say, or a leader for SDR enablement that we can talk to and make sure that we kind of give them what they actually require?
There's
two to loop in. So one is Hannah, who leads the entire SDR org globally, I believe.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Chris Wang, who is specifically responsible for SDR enablement.
Okay.
There's also, actually, he's supposed to, there's another, maybe it's SMB enablement. O'Neill told me to work with someone, I think her name is Melissa. No, that's not right. Kelly. There's a Kelly that does enablement for the SMB. So how much she has to do with the SDRs, I'm not sure. It's Kelley. Maybe on the checklist, I have a lists of names of who to contact too.
Yeah,
And
I was just going to say, I think that the idea behind launching the sales play is that one is probably Somers's calendar. That's the big constraint, in the sense that we don't want to say like, hey, we're going to ship these 3 things and then enable sales all of them all in the same week. So that's probably the major constraint. And then the secondary constraint would be is if there are any associated marketing campaigns that need to be executed in conjunction with that sales play, then those similarly need to be on a calendar. And so I think that's the intention behind this issue that I linked in particular, is that from the perspective of marketing campaigns, they need to know what date sales plays are going to hit. So, and then maybe there's a few others. So Cindy, are you taking an action item to create an MR to kind of stub out that checklist?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome, thank you.
just to close out on that, so Cindy, will you be reaching out to Hannah, Kelly, and Christopher Wang, or should I reach out to them?
If you need it done quickly, go ahead and do that, and then let you and I reconcile to fold in what you learn into the overall MR. This needs to be pretty collaborative. So what I'm going to do is I'll come up with a boilerplate for a checklist, and then I think everybody's going to have to weigh in on it to add to it and flesh it out a bit.
Okay, sounds good. I'll try to async reach out to the 3 of them, and then maybe later this week try to schedule some time with them. If you're able to, I'll keep you in sync. So if you're able to reach out to them earlier, that's fine as well.
Okay. What I'd probably do is just ping them on the MR and ask them to weigh in on the MR for me, but you might want to talk to them specifically about your campaign.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, William.
Cool. Then 14.0 is coming up, which is very exciting, and typically on a major release, and in terms of semantic versioning, where we're revving from 13 dot something to 14.0, we tend to do a little bit more. There tends to be, tend to try to do some type of press announcement, because we'll get some good press coverage usually with our media partners. And so the question would be, how about if Brian owns that 14.0 launch? And Sami, it sounds like maybe you were on the docket for it, but that works out for you.
It's push. We added a launch in there.
And that's right. So do we need to, is there a link to the release post managers? Let's just take is this page up to date with the latest? Let me see if I can. Is this one here? Yeah. Is this accurate? We have a May, and then 14.0 is in June, or is this out of date?
That's accurate.
Okay. Cool. Then for 14.0, so Sami, it looks like you are currently slotted for 13.12 in May. Does that still work for you?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. And then Parker, if we move Brian here onto 14.0, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine. Pretty flexible there. These are, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. And then maybe we can look at
And
the
then-
rotation and add some other folks for the upcoming ones.
Okay. So I would be, you were after me. So I would flip flop with Brian. I would be August 22nd.
I think so, unless you want to take July, which
That's cool. No, I think, I don't think either way matters. I just saw that you were on for July. So yeah, I guess either one of those swaps is fine with me.
You've got wedding stuff, Parker. Do you need to work
Oh,
around
yeah.
any of that? When is not your wedding necessarily, but ones that you're in?
Oh, that's the end of this month, luckily.
Okay.
So yeah, that one is into April. So it'll be the end of this month when I'm headed to New Orleans.
So when is your wedding? Do you know that?
It is April of next year.
Okay.
Actually, it'll be the day after we release on April 22nd. It'll be a GitLab release day and then a Parker marriage day.
Oh, yeah.
That's exciting.
I just realized, does 14.3 overlap contribute?
Ooh, no, contributes on the 9th, right?
Oh, is
Or
it?
I could be. I mean, that's a good thing to ask though while we're on the topic.
We had a launch, I think in Cape Town, and a bunch of people just sat in the corner and knocked out the release post while we were there.
So contribute is the 19th through 24th. So yeah, we've got the release right in the middle of it.
Okay.
Although it'll be easy to track down anyone who hasn't pushed something.
True. Hey, put that drink with an umbrella down. We got to push this. Come on.
Exactly.
There's a breaking changes blog in the works, and I'm going to do a version 13 year in review in the weeks leading up to 14.0. But is there anything that was already like special and in the works for 14.0, Samir or Parker, that you'd heard of? Nothing really. Okay.
Darren on the runner team might have something. Let me double check on that, and I'll follow up with you. I'm going to take a note to remember to do that.
Great.
Yeah, I was going to say, if across the team, if you all could, as you sync with your kind of PM counterparts, query into that for like kind of what are they planning for 14.0, and then Brian, it might be able to be good for you to sync with the Noop to see kind of if he has anything that's in mind.
Yeah, last year we recorded, Cindy, that was you last year, and it was Scott, right? I think, who recorded a video for 13.0.
Yeah.
But that was all we did. In 12.0, we actually produced like a little show. It was like a 30 or 45 minute show with a SID AMA and a bunch of other stuff. But I don't know if there's anything special in the works for 14.0. We should do something.
There's usually PR, so you need to coordinate with Natasha and see what the plan is.
Well, and with the new brand messaging, there's probably I think we have enough runway, I think, to ramp up something that supports that too.
Yeah, and Brian, I would think it's your launch. So what do you think should be a part of it? Like plan the activities.
That's right. Awesome.
Do we need to open an MR to switch, or were you planning on that, or what?
Yeah, actually, Parker, could you open an MR to that page?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
And that way we can. Yeah.
And there's no one else that needs to be swapped, right? Sorry. Just me and Brian. Samia still stays 13-12. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
But we can fill out. Oh yeah, I guess. I mean, who's volunteering for the 22nd? I was like,
we might as well put someone in there for
Yeah.
September and October while I'm in here.
Yeah, because September, that one's the one that'll overlap with contribute.
Yeah,
Is that
you can
14.3?
throw me in there. If I'm up next anyway, because I just did 13.10. So
Well, if I'm not going to be able to make it, then I'll take it from you, Carmack.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can.
Yeah. What
mean-
are you
Well,
thinking?
I don't know I may not get, I don't know if I'll get a vaccine by then. So if I do get, then maybe I'll come. Otherwise, I wouldn't.
Yeah. I wonder if GitLab. So GitLab said they'll help reimburse, right? Is there a way that you could find one that maybe isn't waiting for the government to come around and have it to you? Are there ways that you could go and find one and get reimbursed by GitLab maybe?
No, it's not about the cost. It's just that they're not giving anybody below 45 years right now.
Availability. Okay. Yeah. All righty. Well, we got our fingers crossed.
Me too. Okay.
There is a 0.6, which is that the GC deck is next Monday. So I will share this, that Ty and Tracy and I and Todd have had a little bit of conversation on the way we format this. And for this next coming GC, we will kind of keep to our like the format that we've always had, which is basically anything that you shipped, kind of like we're going to have a slide, and the goal is for that slide to have all of the stuff. So this might be a good topic for discussion. My opinion on that format is that I don't like it. And the reason why is because it's a heavy emphasis on activities and not results. And so I would love to see a shift in the way that we do group conversation from outputs to outcomes. And so this would, like, I would love to see something like, these are the outcomes, the results that we're aiming for. Like, let's say, for example, in our GTM motions, or otherwise for like other projects that we're on, these are the outcomes we're aiming for, and then how we're tracking to those. So that's what I would love to see for a group conversation. But I thought I would, for this next GC, same as always, kind of like do the same thing we've always done, add all of your links to the deck. Please do that ASAP. I think that one of the reasons I don't like the old format is because there's always a scramble and you have to go, and it's kind of like logging your work twice. But the sooner you can add your stuff to that deck, then the better it makes it on Fern, who will be has to make a video for that GC. So please get your stuff into him so he has it early. But on the topic of kind of shipping out the format, any kind of thoughts on that from the team?
How do you measure, like for customer meetings, how do we measure outcomes for that when they may not be known for a while?
Right. So my thought is that we probably wouldn't just report on the meetings that we attended. So I think it's okay. Like, so for example, for this next GC, I think it's okay to say, like, here are a bunch of customer meetings we attended. And I think that's okay to report that. But I think what might be ideal would be to ask the question, like, why do we attend those meetings? Right? Like, what's the result that we're trying to enact? And then how do we know if we achieve that result or not? And so the idea would be that's what we would report on. That's what we would kind of share with the organization, is that, like, here's a result that we're tracking to, or here's and we could talk about, like, these are activities that we did in order to achieve that result. But it's just a shift kind of from we're doing this activity because it's an activity we do, to this is the result we're trying to derive, and the activities that we perform may change.
I agree with your direction, not sure how we measure, because like the GTM motions, why, we're dumping a ton of time and energy into those. What are the intended outcomes, and how do you measure them today? It seems like our intended outcome would be, if you took each of the GTM motions, they've each got a target of what they're planning on growing revenue wise, but that's not going to be achieved for 6 months at least. So how do you measure? You almost have to, like, say, this is what our intent is. We'll tell you what we actually achieve 6 months from now.
Yeah. So what I would love to see, and I don't know how much each team has delved into this, but ideally within the structure of, like, you have a go-to-market motion, and that go-to-market motion is comprised of some set of marketing activities. So some set of campaigns and some set of sales plays. And then for each of those campaigns and sales plays, then we would have, outcomes that we're driving towards. And so what would be really cool is if for this one, is if we even started to make that shift, although this is not like a a requirement. For this one, like, let's just do the same thing we've always done. It's next Monday, do what's familiar. But in my mind, it would be great to say, like, here are these 3 go-to-market motions. This is what PMM team and TMM team are spending a huge amount of time on. And these are the results we're aiming to drive. This is, and so you're sharing the predictor. This is what we're trying to go and achieve. And then yeah, over the coming months, we would be able to report against that.
That sounds like a good slide for you to create, William.
I'm totally up for it. And my only cop out there is I'm a little bit kind of like behind the, like, I don't even think I've attended I have not yet been to like a DevOps platform stand-up even. So some of I'm kind of like, you know, I think I was out of office for a week, and then I was like CMO shadow for 2 weeks. And so that last week was kind of my first week poking into this stuff. So I'm happy to kind of own that. And then that's why I said, like, I probably won't have it for this Monday, but that's a really good thing in general for me to just put it to do to myself, that, like, you know, have some kind of overview on how all the motions are measuring success. Which, candidly, Cindy, that's kind of what I said in the meeting to Todd and Tracy and Ty was, I really think that's what I told them. I said, I think it's our responsibility to create the GC slide. I don't think we should just always bump this down to our teams as their responsibility to go and make the slide. I like the idea of, hey, anybody on the team could add things they want visibility for. So to your point, Tracy, if you wanted visibility for, let's say, hey, look at all these kind of sales meetings I went to, I think that's good to have as, like, anything that y'all care about and that you wanted to surface. I think that's good to have that channel. But that was kind of my point, is that, like, hey, I think it's the management team's job to create the GC deck. So making a to-do myself. Cool. Alita, you've got 0.7 here.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone for jumping in and helping me out with the partner versus competitor exercise. Very, very helpful. So as I mentioned, that's going to kind of be the starting point for us to decide. Well, no, I think we're deciding to keep, even if we tag someone as a partner, we're going to still keep a competitor page, right? I haven't read your notes in the issue yet.
So that is a great question. Actually, I think that this definitely bears worth talking about, even on YouTube, I suppose, for anybody in the world that would watch this video. But so there's a few bits of nuance. So one is that we have a delimiter on, is another vendor, are they a technology partner or aren't they? Or even we could even just say generally, like, are they a partner or are they not a partner? That list exists, and there are criteria for being an official partner. And, you know, some companies are partners and some companies aren't. Now, some of the nuance comes in, like, well, what if somebody's, let's say, like a potential partner? Or what if there's somebody that we may want to partner with in the future, and some of our capabilities overlap, but some of them don't. And so what message do we put up about them on our website? So for example, on a comparison page where we compare GitLab with other DevOps tools, as the thing that we say about that tool, is that going to hinder, let's say, the work of our alliances team to try to create a partnership that we don't yet have? So I think that's some of the nuance that we need to navigate. I did open an issue where I think I tagged the whole team on. I think the team, you should have gotten a notification. And then I think, what did we tag Alita? We tagged Mayank and Dunk and some other folks. But I kind of had like three. I think in my head there are three basic options. Maybe there are more, but there's basically, for any vendor out there where they are a partner or potential partner, and also they have some type of capability that overlaps with GitLab, we could have only a DevOps comparison page, we could have only a partner page, or we could have both. So there's some discussion of like kind of what's the strategy there. I think that we end up having both, but that's just a thing to kind of get alignment on, I think.
Yeah, I haven't gone into the issue to add my kind of thoughts yet. I'll do that today. If the team decides and we all are aligned to having both, I'm okay with that, just because that's what we all want. But my personal perspective, I think when we look at DevOps tools and how many competitors we cover, I think for me, I feel like we should narrow the list down, and this is one of the ways that I can do that. But again, whatever we decide, I'm on board with.
Yeah, well,
sorry.
I was just going to say, Alita, I think you are the DRI, so you should take the input of everybody else and ideally make a call that kind of weighs the trade-offs of what we need to weigh.
Right.
But to your point about tiering the idea would be maybe if somebody's a partner, maybe they fall into a different tier. That makes sense. That's maybe part of the conversation as well. What were you thinking, Cormac?
I was just going to say +1 to paring that list down. I think there are some folks, I imagine it's the same for everyone, but certainly within the agile plan space, there are some competitors there where it probably doesn't make sense. Like, at least, I mean, Atlassian does a lot of things, but like Trello from Atlassian, Trello is not really if someone is considering Trello, they're probably not considering GitLab for that specific use case. They could be using Trello with other things, and then there could be a multi-vendor solution they're comparing against us. But there are some cases where if we needed to trim that list down, we could probably do so without doing a disservice to customers.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep.
I mean, the ROI is tough, right? With the state it's in now, I think we'd have a much better time keeping it up to date and maintaining it, and much more focused list, if you will.
Yeah.
That's very much true on the SCM side. I mean, I added to the list a whole bunch of folks. Everyone who hosts snippets is not a competitor. Yeah.
And one bit of nuance that I might suggest is that for that section of our website is not, I don't think the intention is strictly to show competitors in a kind of competitive sense, although I think so. For example, Cormac, to your point about a tool like Trello, it seems reasonable that folks that are users, prospects, customers of GitLab would say, okay, well, GitLab has these issue boards. When could I use issue boards and when could I use Trello? Could I use them together? Would I use them for different reasons? That seems like that would be helpful information to our customer base. Now, what I really like, Alita, is your proposal of tiering these, where there are some tools that are probably more important to our user base. That for those kind of tools, it's more important to those users and those prospects and those customers that there's some kind of how do I understand this tool versus GitLab? And those are the ones where we focus on energy and effort. So maybe a tool like Trello just has something very lightweight or nothing at all because it's not something that our users would care as much about. But that's kind of my thought on it, is that if there was a user and they're trying to think, well, when would I use GitLab and when would I use tool X? It's probably helpful to have some type of web information about that.
Well, that one, to that point, William, I think if we had those kind of qualitative context pages you were talking about, then that would be wonderful for Trello, because I think Trello is one of those things that people just spin up everywhere, and there will be questions about that. If I think right now the thing that's a little weird is if we're scoring against them, it's a weird, because then it is a, you know, direct, it doesn't give you any extra context and it could confuse things. So if we did have that, how does this fit into this worldview, that would also be, you know, would also be easier on our partners. I think that would be useful information.
One of the things,
Yeah, go
one
ahead,
of the
Trey.
things that
Cindy.
I was thinking was, if you look at it and break it into two parts, you've got how do we compare on scope and how do we compare on capabilities? And you might give everyone a comparison on scope and not everyone a comparison on capabilities. So scope would be important to show, you know, we do all this, they only do this part, or they do all this too, but to understand how they fit from a scope standpoint, and then from a capability standpoint, maybe with a partner, you decide you don't want to go down that path, or maybe you do go down that path and you say, and they have this capability that we don't have that complements us, and that's why they're a partner.
So I have the scoring thing can get so complex. Here's what I was thinking, and you guys tell me if you agree or disagree. So Parker, myself, and Ryan, we had a call last week with Parker. What was the guy's name from Forrester?
Chris Kondo.
Chris Kondo, right? We had a great conversation. The idea is that we start having these monthly sync calls where I ask them specific questions, competitive related questions. I was thinking the next call we have, that I bring this to the table and ask them their perspective and their opinion on what do they think we should consider, what should be the factors we should consider in scoring ourselves against other competitors.
So,
what do you think about that?
So I will just, I'll say this, and Alita, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, and so it, like, you and I have had 50 conversations about this, but I realize like the rest of the team has not. So my strong, extremely strong stance is that the current graphic that we have on those DevOps tools pages is really, really bad. It is negative on several fronts. So the reason why is, to your point, Cindy, it scores capabilities of every single tool on that list, and it treats them all as though they are platform. So you look at the page and you would say, for example, like Trello, you would be like, Trello is not a DevOps platform, but we score it, like we give it like 0 for CI or something. It's just really goofy. And so the reason why it's bad is because like we lose credibility, because anybody who looks at that page is like, does GitLab even understand what Trello is? Like, why are they even scoring Trello on CI?
Yep.
It makes us lose credibility. It causes frustration with partners or potential partners, right? As our alliances team has shared with us, hey, so-and-so wants to partner with GitLab, but we have this page where we like really, really misrepresent their tool. So we're not being fair. I don't feel like it's in line with GitLab's values of transparency. It's not very transparent. It's very, very like marketing kind of dishonest almost. It's kind of, I don't want to overstate it, but I really, really dislike the current graphic.
Yeah, we've talked about it, and I agree. When I brought this up to leadership, I think one of the things that leadership really likes about the format of the infographic is that they feel someone can quickly look at it and immediately say, oh, Jenkins is not a player in XYZ space. You know, they're a CI/CD player or whatever, right? So I think that was one of the reasons why leadership would like us to continue down the path with these current infographics, right?
Then they should give us the resources to do it right. I think like if that's the case, then yeah, we just.
Well, Alita, I really like your proposal. So I don't know, Alita, would you be able to just link your issue or your plan? You have like and I know most of the team has waited on that plan, but it'd be great to just have a link in the agenda. And one of the things I really like in your scope of issues is your kind of proposal for an augment to the current graphic. The current graphic treats everybody like they're all a platform play, and it's kind of dishonest, and it's kind of, you know, not credible, and then it scores everybody like that. But that's kind of goofy. what leadership, or like Todd in particular, what Todd likes about the graphic is that it tells our platform story. And that's true. It would be great to tell our platform story, but there's a graphic that you proposed, Alita, that's really cool. I like, because it shows, okay, GitLab is a DevOps platform and this tool does this one thing. Nobody is going to be offended by having, that's true. That is true. It's transparent. It's credible. If we just have a visual representation of GitLab, what's the difference between GitLab and Trello? Well, GitLab does all of this stuff, including issue boards, and Trello does like issue boards, right? Or, Kanban boards. And that's one difference. And that alone, just having that credibly represented, tells our platform story and helps our users, right? They would look at it and be like, well, what's the difference between GitLab and Trello? Oh, well, this is one major difference. So I like how Cindy said it's like scope. So if you just show the scope, you don't necessarily have to score on scope. But then potentially a score would be on, like, let's say capabilities maybe, where on the specific bits of functionality where GitLab and whatever tool overlap, like how do they compare?
Yeah. And so I know I don't want to take up too much more time on this, William. I know we have other things to talk about, but really quick before we move on, I wanted to get the team to weigh in. I think most of you kind of weighed in on the CAD call, but for those of you who were not on the CAD call, so I threw one option out there. Hey, we talked to some analysts and said, hey, we're doing the scoring. Can you kind of help us out, guide us here, right? I don't know what they would say, but my recommendation is that we ask. The second option is, do we just ask for money to hire a third-party firm to come in and do it? And I know we talked about this on the CAD call and everyone gave their opinion, but for those of you who were not on the call, can you share your thoughts? What do you, yay or nay? Do you think that's something we should do or not?
You should. I think it's also important to point out, Alita, that right now it would be a voluntary thing. And
Yes.
like my point on the call was that if it's voluntary, I don't think it'll get done.
I think with third parties, do you mean just a third party to come in and get it done, or a third party to come in and put their stamp of approval on it like we were doing?
Yeah, third party to actually do the research and the scoring and all of that for us.
I think that that would certainly add to credibility, but I think that it can also go stale unless we're engaged in a long-term partnership. And since it's being recorded, when we worked with another vendor, there were thoughts that there could be business considerations at some point that could affect that. If our relationship with that party changes at any point, then what happens to, do they own that data? Do we have the right to update that data? As soon as we update it, do we lose the credibility that we gained? So that's something we'd need to lock in something long-term if we were to do that. It also, we would have to figure out where the marketing in that goes as well. Because it is also a marketing tool. And if a third party controls that, then we lose the ability. We'd have to market around it.
Yeah. Okay.
I will say this. I think that if we had tiered, comparison pages, and it wasn't like 80 tools plus or however many are on there, and every single quarter, this entire team and all of TMM and as many resources as possible needs to go and update all 80 tools every quarter. That seems, I just don't want to sign up for that. But if we have a tiered list of tools and we say like there's tier 1 and maybe even like a tier 2, it feels to me like a pretty reasonable ask. Like I would make this ask of the team to say, like, as part of your quarterly goals as a product marketing manager, you would update 1 to 3 tools each quarter to kind of keep it fresh. Does that seem like a reasonable ask?
I think so.
I think so, but I don't want to speak for.
It's not something that I relish, but I think.
Yeah, but if we know it's coming, it's not like, last time it was all hands on deck for, 2 days. And I think if we know it's coming, then, we'll all have moments when we can.
2 days?
2
like-
days. Yeah, mine was
Well,
more like
it was
2
like 2
weeks.
months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
That
so like,
consumed-
I don't see this
Yeah.
scaling. That's my input, but yeah.
Yeah, basically, I thought that entire last time was a pretty big debacle of a mismanagement of resources. But my thought is, as a product marketer, you want to be an SME on the top competitors for your solutions that you own, right? Or the products that you own. But we only have one product, so in this case, for the solutions that you own, a core competency for any PMM would be to be a competitive subject matter expert on the top competitors in their space. And so if you're doing that kind of bit of research anyway, or for that matter, it could be like, because you have a task to go and like update some set of pages, or just to even to check in on them, then it's a reason to go and check in on them. And that's kind of my thought there, is that for 80 tools is too much, but Alita, I think, and we could ask this of Ty as well, to say like, hey, we think a core competency for a TMM is to be an SME on the top 1 to 3 tools for their space, and that they should keep fresh on that information on like a quarterly basis. And then one of the outcomes of keeping fresh on that would be like maybe an update to a web page. That feels like a very fair and a reasonable and a scalable ask.
Here's another thought too, is if we do break it into scope versus capabilities, the scope part of it shouldn't change too much from quarter to quarter, right? That
Right.
should be more stable. Capabilities might, but if you tier that capabilities part and say, top 3 competitors or something, and then give the ability for them to open an MR and suggest changes if there's something on there that's not accurate. But I do think you still have to figure out, you probably don't want the detailed comparison on ones that you're trying to partner.
And if we limit it to say top 3, our PM counterparts should be deeply involved with that same sort of research already.
Yep.
So
In
it
fact,
should be,
they might even have it on their vision page.
yeah. And so I think that if I called up Gabe and said, Gabe, let's talk about, I don't know, I'm trying to think, Basecamp. I was like, yeah, I haven't looked at Basecamp, but I guarantee he's looked at Azure boards and that sort of thing. So I think that's that if we limit it, that could be easier than we think.
Cool. Well, Alita has a plan in there. There's a specific issue for the partner stuff you can weigh in on, and some of these other things as they crop up, we can log issues for them. And thank you all for a great meeting, and happy Monday.
Yeah. Happy week, everybody.
Right.
Fingers crossed for Summit's vaccine.
Yeah. See you.